So Canon started, or pretty much started, this whole video DSLR revolution where full frame or large sensor DSLR cameras became compatible for video, and it revolutionized the whole industry. People had been shooting on small chip sensor cameras for video for a long time, and had always been looking for that film look or that cinema look, and Canon finally made it happen with the 5D Mark II. And that was a very popular camera, but certainly had a lot of flaws, moire, aliasing, just to name a few. But one thing that's always bugged me about the Canon DSLRs is that this claim that they're 1080p, that they're HD 1080, and people think when they're filming with these cameras that they're getting 1080p. There's no doubt that it is better than standard def, but there's no way that the Canon cameras, the DSLRs, are filming 1080p, the 5D, the 7D, the 60D. And just to prove that, I wanted to do a little test. I've been saying this for a long time. I'm sure if you've read any posts on my blog, you've seen me advocate this idea that they're not 1080p cameras. In fact, almost no cameras that are 1080, that record 1080, are actually truly 1080p. There's always going to be an advantage of recording something higher than 1080 and downsampling. But just to prove that point, so it's crystal clear, so anyone who thinks, if you're filming with a 5D Mark III, you are not getting 1080. And now to prove that, I've set up these tests. And the first one is the GH4 in 4K, downscaled to 1080, right next to the 5D Mark III, filming in its 1080p mode. All settings are exactly the same. There are different lenses between the two cameras to match a similar field of view. The 4K on the GH4 is slightly cropped a little bit more, but I didn't want to change the setup because the 1080p from the GH4 matches with the 1080p from the 5D in this setup. So side by side, it's pretty obvious the GH4 destroys the 5D in terms of resolution. There should be no doubt. I mean, just looking at this, the 5D footage looks like absolute crap. Even on YouTube, after compression, I'm sure the difference is clear. But even if you want further proof, I've posted high-res, full-res stills on my blog post. You can check the description. Go check those out for yourself. If you're worried about YouTube compression, you can go look at those stills and see the difference. It is astonishing how much 1080p there isn't in the 5D footage. The next test is the GH4 in 1080 mode. So I'm recording 1080p on the GH4 side by side with 1080p on the 5D. And again, it's actually interesting. The 4K, this is what I was talking about, where there's always an advantage, because when you're recording 1080p on the GH4, it's recording 1080, 1920 by 1080 resolution, but there's no guarantee as to what the quality of that resolution is. And you're dealing with stuff like compression and downscaling algorithms, and hoping that the processing in the camera is smart enough to preserve all that detail. And oftentimes it isn't. And so even with the GH4 in 1080p at the max 200 megabit, you can still see a difference between the 4K GH4 footage next to the 1080p footage. And that's the next test I did. So here you can see the GH4 in 4K, the GH4 1080p, and a photo from the GH4. So side by side, you can see that they're fairly close, but there is an advantage to the 4K. And then the best one is going to be the photo, because you're not dealing with the high speed downscaling or sampling and compression of video. You're getting a better image in the photo. Ideally, the video stuff should look exactly like the photos, but oftentimes it just doesn't because of the limitation of these cameras. They're cheap consumer DSLRs, or just mirrorless cameras in the GH4's case. And when you look at the 5D next to each other, the 5D, the video, the 1080p from the 5D, and the photo downscaled to 1080p, you can see a striking difference between the quality you're getting in the video mode versus the quality you could theoretically have if it would record true 1080. So I can't see anyone making a good argument as to how Canon can call this 1080p HD, because it's not. It looks nice if you're into the shallow depth of field look, but in terms of resolution, it's just not there. So don't kid yourself when you think you're filming 1080p and a lot of people think they don't need 4K yet. Well, if you're not even capturing true 1080 to begin with, that's a serious problem. You know, a lot of people are watching stuff on their mobile phones and they're not even viewing in HD. So I get it. It's fine. Whatever. Do your thing. But don't kid yourself. Don't think that you're recording 1080 when you're clearly not. 1080 looks really nice if it's true 1080. So to get that, like with cameras like the GH4, you need to, you know, kind of overshoot, get a higher resolution, such as the 4K on the GH4, and downscale to 1080 to get a truer, cleaner, clearer 1080p. What 1080p is actually supposed to look like, because the 1080p off the 5D Mark III, it's not what it claims to be. Far from it.